knew that the Mount had a good team. I was like 5'9", and so I'm talking to the guy who
come up to the front.
Watch it. So I'm talking. There was a guy who played on our varsity who gave me a lot of grief. I mean, he's about 6'6" and everything, and he wasn't very nice to me. I'll say it that way. So anyway, but when I knew that Matthew was coming, I didn't know who was on the team, but I just told this guy, I said, the Matthew's coming here. You talk about all this trash. Wait until they come up here, and this guy's going to get care of it. That's what I told this guy. Oh yeah, you wait. Anyway, so they come, and they had Joe Kennedy, I think was here, was on that team too, and they had a great team. And so when they put Bob in the game, I just remember that Bob was like, he was real tall and skinny, but he blocked every shot that came in. Nobody could get a shot off. He was blocking shots, was getting all the rebounds. And so he intimidated St. John's, where they had to move their whole game out. And so I just remembered the way he played the game. That's my first memory of him and thoughts about him. I'm like, good God Almighty, nobody can score with him. Because he played the game like Bill Russell did. That's the way he played the game in high school. Now, again, the Math had a great team, but they had him doing everything on the he shut everything down. So that's my first thoughts about him, and so that's why I was so happy to actually be able to play with him. And I was really excited about coming to Notre Dame when I knew he was here. And when I met him, he was just very nice. So that's this is on the air, so that's my story. I'm sticking with that one right now. Okay? Who's next? Who's next?
Good evening, everybody. Jim Slattery here. I graduated with Mr. Whitmore from 1969, and many of you. But my little experience with Bob, I live in Arlington, and Bob is right there in Washington. So I see Bob from time to time for dinner. But when Bob tried to take the bar exam in Virginia, he lived in my house. He was my roommate because he had to be a resident of Virginia. So just love Bob. He's a wonderful man. And I'm so sorry about all the illnesses that are happening with him. But anyway, I really appreciate being able to be here tonight and to be with you. And I will pass it on to St. John's.
No, St.
Joe's.
St. Joe's. Talking about the second life. I'm Dr. Eric I. Mitchell. And don't forget the I, because that's my daddy. And Bob Whitmore was kind of like that because I took his number after he left. I was duly impressed with the way he carried out his business. That was what he did on the floor all the time. And I really enjoyed that, and he always complains about me fouling him. I never fouled him. Okay, Carlos will verify that for me.
They didn't call fouls in practice.
Well, in practice you don't have referees. Okay? All you had was Morgan Wooten and a whistle, okay? And sometimes we think Morgan had 2 whistles. Okay, but the epitome of what he did, he led the way. He came out here, it was a very challenging time, okay? Even myself, I was going to be the first black ball player at Duke, and North Carolina, at Florida State. Okay, there was a real change at times where you had opportunity, and we took that opportunity. And then I got recruited to Notre Dame, and with a scholarship at Notre Dame. But I was no fool, because they had a guy named Austin Carr, Carlos Jones, and Sid Catlett in my class. Oh yeah, and the only ball I would have ever seen was a rebound. Okay, there was no way in hell I was coming here. Okay? And I carried all those guys in my 1963 Volkswagen. My 1963 gray Volkswagen I was driving, and thank goodness, otherwise I couldn't have played the 6th man. And then I had Tom Little. Tom Little was coach, was one of the shootingest guards out of Washington, D.C. Raise your hand if you remember Tom Little. Okay, Mackin, okay? Arch rival, okay? And it was interesting because on the other seat, in the front seat, was my best buddy named Sid Catlett. Okay? And he passed on. And so I was 6'6". Okay, Tom Little had to sit on the stick because he was only 6'3". Okay, shift, Tom, shift. Okay. And in the back seat was a guy named Carlos Jones. And in the middle was a guy named Austin Carr that had to get crammed in because he was only 6'4". And then a guy named Ed. And it was so funny because, you know, if you look at television today, everybody has the hair again. And we all had the hair, except one guy that went to a military academy, and he was high and tight. College Jones. But we would get out and you would wonder how could that much hair get into that. But in 2 years, those guys taught me how to play basketball to an umpteen degree. So indebted for sure to them because we ran around and kicked everybody's butt. Okay, and once you got on the court, you didn't come off until you got beat. And usually it was time to go to the highest dairy store and get about 10 gallons of Kool-Aid and whatever. So, but Bob Whitmore is the epitome of leading the charge. And that's why, as Carlos Jones just said, and that's why Sid Catlett, and that's why Austin Carr all came because the granddad was here, only 2 years ahead of us. But he led it with an epitome that we all appreciate. And God bless. And we're glad. I flew in from Maine today, and I had the funny thing change. I got here at 4:56. I looked at my clock, and all of a sudden it became 5:56. I said, how the hell did that happen? Okay? So I came right over, and glad to see everybody. And who's next? Who's next? Step up. Come on. You don't want me to keep on talking? No. All right. Here.
Bill Bay, Bob and I both graduated from the math in '65. A little more serious than the humorous ones you've heard, but I visited Bob about 2000 at Johns Hopkins when he was pretty sick and fighting pancreatic cancer. And there's only a 1% survival rate with pancreatic cancer. And I was chatting with Bob and I said, the insipid question, how do you feel? He said, I'm going to lick this. I paused and I said, okay, I'm rooting for you. He licked it. That was 19 years ago. Wow. He's still with us. And I nominate that as his greatest accomplishment.
I never heard of, even knew that was about Whitmore until I came here to Notre Dame. And I had the opportunity to sit in Coach Mike Chico's office back in the administration building one day. And you guys from the old days remember how small that little front office was. The coach's office was in the back. I'm sitting out front, and I hear him cursing. Okay? He is cursing like you can't believe. And he's telling them, and Coach Chico is our fencing coach. And I hear him say, he's going to take this sword, and I'm going to run it up in long, skinny black butt. And I'm a freshman, and I am scared to death. I don't know these people are in there. Out walks Bob Whitmore, okay, and Dwight Murphy. Needless to say, Coach Chico had my attention totally. He threatened these two big guys, but then brings me in, talks to me, but he tells me, he says, these guys that just came out, he said, Bob Whitmore, I'm going to have him keep you under his wing and point you in the right direction. Because the class I was in, there was some rowdy dudes. Jackie Mean, Thomas Senate, Collis, Sid, and we were all young and stupid. I mean, we were. There was a lot of things happening on campuses at that time. They had the civil rights stuff and the Black Power movement, and I mean, there were tons and tons of things going on. But Bob Whitmore took us under his wing, and I can't speak for everybody, one of the most influential people that I ran into here, besides Larry and Coach Chico, was Bob Whitmore. And he's been a friend of mine, and I'm indebted to him forever, because he led me through the path and the hard times at Notre Dame. And anybody that can tell me back then, particularly for my brother, Notre Dame was a tough place to be because there weren't many of us. There were few and far between. There was so much going on pulling in different directions. But Bob was our safe place. He was kind of like our aircraft carrier. And we used to go to Farley Hall. And we'd go in that room, and that was supposed to be like your psychiatrist's place where you bring you some peace and zen. It was never the way they gave it to you. You got it hard and mean, but at the same time, it got over to you. And it kept us in the right direction. It put us in the right direction. And I did a lot of my successes that I've had in life to Bob, because when we were here, he was the man, and still, as far as I'm concerned, he still is the man and will always be the man.
Amen.
Take care.
My name is Neville Waters, otherwise known as Little Junior. And let me tell you, I'm very thankful because I feel like a 10-year-old again. Because of all these guys that he said, Ed Epps and Collis and obviously Witt and Austin Carr, all these people were my heroes when I was a little kid. My father, before the term mentoring was defined, that's what he used to be to all these heroes of mine. I remember they used to come over and dunk on my little 6-foot basket. My mom would be feeding them my food, my sodas. But I really looked up to them, and in many ways, basketball became the bond that really was, my family. I remember going to basketball games, but one of my greatest memories was the first basketball game I ever went to was in Maryland Cole Fieldhouse, and there was this guy from New York, Power Memorial, Lou Alcindor, who eventually became Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, had never been beaten before. He was the greatest player of all time, still the greatest player of all time, all right? We ain't gonna have no debates tonight.
Oscar.
And I always remember that, wow, this is, first game. But what I'm gonna remember now is Bob Whitmore beat Lou Alcindor. And it is an example of, I think, the character that he displays. And as you age, the age difference tends to shrink. They're still older than me, but I mean, I feel more like a peer. But tonight, I do feel like a 10-year-old again, and I'm just really proud to be able to share in this honor for a really great individual and an excellent, not only an excellent basketball player, but an excellent human being. Bob Whitmore. I was gonna say, because I'm gonna start rapping here in a minute. Give me a microphone. 10 years ago, a friend of mine asked me to set MC Brown.
Quick, somebody get up there.
I can't keep up with Junior. My name's Joe Kennedy. I'm a teammate of Bobby's. I was a year ahead of him at the marathon. I transferred in as a junior, and Bobby was I think that was his first year on the varsity with me. So we were both a little nervous about things. The math had probably their best team ever, and they all graduated. I don't think Bobby and I really knew what we were in for, but we were working hard to try to get some playing time. And we were fortunate to be playing for probably the greatest coach of all time, Morgan Wooten.
Right.
Bobby and I were both centers that year. And Morgan had an assistant coach named Frank Fuqua, who we would break off into practice. Bobby and I, he'd work us and teach us all the big man moves, the blocking out and playing with your back to the basket. And I probably learned more from Frank about big man moves than I did from any other coach ever. And Bobby would probably say the same thing. But that's was kind of our foundation. We bonded, had 2 great years playing with Bobby, won a lot of games. I had a chance to play against him 2 times in college. And one thing I'd say about Bobby, he's an example of continuous improvement. Every year he got better. Everybody knows about his career at Notre Dame and DeMatha, but every time I saw him, he just was a better player. And because he worked at it, he had a great desire to be as good as he could possibly be. I want to leave you with one story. It's my senior year, Bobby's junior, and we're playing at Oxon Hill. We're supposed to win big. And Morgan always got nervous about games like this because we didn't take them that seriously. Now, you know, DeMatha was all boys. Oxon Hill had probably the best looking cheerleaders in the So, we're out of halftime. We're only up by 1 or 2, and Morgan's very upset. And Bobby and I are over there looking at the cheerleaders. And I think that put Morgan in the water. Anyway, we lucked out. We won by 4, but we had to run extra laps when we got back to the mountain. Anyway, Bobby's a great friend, great player, great person. Proud to be his friend and teammate. And this is a well-deserved award for him.
Youngest, the spoiled one, as he would say. And I think I would just like to thank everyone for coming out. Bob is upstairs, of course, resting, but I would like to thank everyone for coming out and honoring him. I'm sure my mother and father are looking down and grateful and happy and proud of this moment. Of course, I've known Bob for many years. No kidding. The fun times, the bad times, the everything, but this is a wonderful moment for the family to honor him. And again, I appreciate everyone for coming out and celebrating this moment.
Bob, we had great times together. I just want to say how much I love you, like everybody in this room has said tonight. And I wish you could be down here to hear all these great accolades that people have said about you. God bless you. I'm rooting for you.
I've probably known my father a little bit less than most of you. Through my time, I've got to know him pretty well, and definitely love the guy. It's great to hear all these stories you guys have. I didn't know most of the stuff that I'm hearing tonight, so that's really great. And thank you all for coming out. And I really appreciate it.
After Bob had held Lou Alcindor to the lowest total of his basketball career, and that's an interesting stat, isn't it? The lowest total of his career in high school, college, or the pros. Bob held him to the lowest he ever scored. And then I remember Bob coming to me saying, because every college in America warned him then, he said, "What do I do?" He said, I don't know what to do. He said, "Where do I go?" And we talked about it. I always had a rule that I never told them who to marry, and I never told them where to go to college. Because they had to live their own life. And he came back finally and he said, "You know what? Notre Dame is number one. It's the only one that's truly number one. That's where I'm going to go. I'm going to go to Notre Dame." And as all of us are here tonight, honoring this great young man, we all know that there's only one Bob Whitmore. There's only one number one Bob Whitmore.
Yep. My name is Frank Taylor. I'm from D.C. I didn't go to DeMatha. I went to Dunbar High School. I was not an athlete, although everyone who figured out I went to Notre Dame asked me what I played. I played academics and got very good at it. But as I think about Whit and Collis and Austin and Dantley and all the basketball stars at Notre Dame, I'm a basketball lover. So I went to every football and basketball game for the 6 years I was here in undergraduate and graduate school. But what I appreciated more than watching them play basketball or watching Terry and the team play football and back in the day was the humility of these stars. For a guy who wasn't an athlete, they used to call me Fearless Fly, Billy Blind. You know, I was just a regular Joe that was here at the university and found friendship among folks like Bob and Collis and White, God rest his soul. And that takes a lot of humility to take in folks who are not athletes, who are not stars, but to be friends and mentors and to help kind of push through the challenges, quite honestly, of matriculating at Notre Dame. Our class brought 11 African Americans that brought the number on campus to 26. And it wasn't easy. Doesn't mean that anyone's complaining. Without the seniors or the upperclassmen that were before us, it would have been that much more difficult. And Bob has been, he showed up at my apartment when I was here in graduate school and said, I need a place to live, and slept on my sofa for 30 days without permission. But that's Bob, right? But I just keep coming back to the fact that his humaneness and his humility have really been the thing that I have admired over the years and will always appreciate. One can be a star, but it's more important to be a human being and a lover of people. And I think Bob Whitmore falls in that category. So I'm absolutely excited to be here and to honor Bob and his career here at Notre Dame and his successes in life.
Classmate Francis Taylor. My story has to do with Bob's leadership skills and our following in his footsteps. Not in basketball. It was the January of 1967. We were all here as we were freshmen, and Bob was, obviously someone who had been here before us and knew the ropes. And so that January, South Bend experienced the heaviest snowfall it had seen in
37 inches.
37 inches. Some I had only seen less than an inch in my lifetime in South Carolina. So Bob, of course, was concerned, as you all have expressed. Those days, social life on Notre Dame's campus for African American students was really nil. It was nothing, okay? And so we relied upon the friends in the South Bend community to provide outlet activities for us. So one night during, I guess that was semester break, Bob knew where the parties were in South Bend. And so he invited us to go over this party on the west side. Well, of course, we were freshmen, we had curfew, but we were following this upperclassman. And in the snow, we figured no one had a car, and so we got to the circle, and someone flagged a cab.
The only cab at the circle.
The only cab at the circle. However, the driver didn't know that there were 9 of us, including Bob Whitmore. 9 of us, when the door opened, 9 of us jumped into this cab. We went to this party on the west side. It was snowing like the devil. We had a wonderful time. Well, when it was time to come back, we couldn't find a cab to bring us back to campus. And so in all of this snow, we started walking back to Notre Dame. We got near the campus, and the snow was probably 2 feet deep. And here's what happened. Bob got in front of us. We lined up like ducks. Bob got in front of us, and he stepped. And wherever he stepped, we stepped. He led us back to the circle where we all dispersed to our various dorms. And Francis and I talk about that all the time, because when we got to our dormitory at 1 a.m., curfew was at 11, the monitor wouldn't let us in. We were frozen over, but because of Bob, we made it back to campus. And so his leadership skills were far beyond this basketball stuff y'all been talking about, because there are some of us who knew that we were able to finish Notre Dame because he got us back to campus. Now, Robert Michelli was another story, and we dealt with him the next morning for our lateness. But we appreciated Bob for what he did for us on that one night, which impressed all of us. And so what all of you have said tonight about who he is is really captured by his leadership skills, his humanitarian skills, his mentoring us, his preparing, leaving footsteps for us to walk in. So I thank you, Bob, for that.
Pat Kruger. For those of you who don't know me, I am standing. The guys that are here, like Dan Quinn and Terry Hanratty, Bob Arnson, and Dan Saraceno, class of '69. I started with those guys, but I didn't finish. I had to go in the Army and come back. But when I was a freshman, we lived in Breen Phillips Hall. Bob Whitmore, Dwight Murphy was his roommate. My roommate happened to be a guy whose name was pretty famous around here, Leahy. Jim Leahy was Frank Leahy's son. So I had always wanted to come to Notre Dame, but never been here until I got here. And I can tell you that Bob and Dwight Murphy and Bill Hurd, when they came here, there were not a lot of black faces on this campus. But the one thing you could always count on when you walked across campus was that big smile from Bob Whitmore. That's something I'll always remember. A lot of people here from DC. Dick Myers, DC high school coach, was a longtime friend of mine who grew up in Buffalo. So I've followed DC basketball for a long time. I know a lot of these guys from a lot of the teams. I left, came back just in time to see Jackie Meehan and Tommy Sennett, Tim DeBiro, all these guys. McCurchie used to live in Buffalo, and Monahan. We can go on and tell stories for a long time, but I just want you to always remember that the most important thing that you'll always remember is that smile on Bob Whitmore's face, no matter when you saw him, or where you saw him, or when you saw him. God bless you, Bob. Keep smiling.
Family members are here with me. My husband, John Hyland, my sister, Ann Collins Finley. My brother is going to be here tonight. Listening to all of your stories about the kindness of Bobby, you know, it all just makes sense to me because my parents met Bobby when he was at DeMatha and they loved him right away. My parents, my dad was not a recruiter. He worked for the Export-Import Bank, but he was friends with Johnny D. They were in the Coast Guard together. Well, we loved Mrs. Whitmore, and we loved Bobby, and vice versa, and he became like a family member. As the years went on, and he became, you know, a big star, and he played at Notre Dame, and he did all these cool things, and with Daddy, he helped recruit the other DC players who were wonderful. But what happened, what I noticed at the end of my dad and mom's life was that Bobby Whitmore stayed with us. He came and visited my mom and my dad often and called them often. And that's really impressive for somebody who was a big athlete, a big star, and he never forgot about my mom and dad, Francis and Helen Collins. Thank you.
It was, I'm going to talk directly to Bob because we, you know, when someone mentioned DeChico earlier, and DeChico, you know, he called me and he said, "You got to take one of your language." He said, "You're taking Russian." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, we have this little nun."
Sister Sophronia.
Sister Sophronia said, "How hard could she be on a Notre Dame quarterback?" Well, she busted my jaw for the whole time. For 50 years, Bob, I just want to remind you that there were rumors that I had an affair with her. I actually knew it. And there were, you know, when we first got the notice to come to this event, a lot of the football players, your friends, called me up and said, "You gonna go?" I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna go." And everybody said they were gonna come, until they said, "What are they paying?" Nothing. Another Notre Dame freebie here. But we had, with Whit, it was sort of, it's so different from back then, all right, Arnie, and today, where we went to every basketball game. I saw every shot that Bob took, and Bob Whitmore took, and everybody took. But now there's such a
such a, what do I want to say, emphasis put on sports. You know, my son just graduated from there. He played offensive lineman, very good. Couldn't play his 5th year because of concussions, so he got a 1-year MBA, which is going to turn out to be better. But I told him, I said, you go to basketball games. He went to 1 in 5 years. I said, why the hell did you go to games? We went to all of them. He said, we have prayer meetings every night till 7 o'clock, 2 hours of homework. How am I going to go to a game? But that's what we had back then. We had such great friendship that we supported them, they supported us. These guys sold programs, right, Arnie? Before the football games. Little did you know that I got the cut from the program. But we had such great friendship. When he said that they were going to have this evening, I said, no way in hell I'm going to miss it. Because, you know, Bob was one of my dearest friends. I love him to death. And, you know, just the room here, you can tell what great love we all have for this wonderful man. So, thank you all. Take care.
All right, there you go.
Hi, I'm Bob Aronson, captain of the '68 basketball team. I played with greats like Jim McCurchie and Jim Monahan. Anyway, it was a pleasure to play at Notre Dame, and I was proud to be captain of the team. And I'm from Fort Thomas, Kentucky, and
tell us about the night you broke the all-time scoring record.
Oh, I got 37 against Alvin Hayes in Houston, Don the Duck Cheney, and Larry the Tree Lenz. They played a zone. I couldn't miss. 37 points.
Oh my
Bob
God.
Aronson, yeah. Jim McCurchie came off the bench for 5 buckets, 3 of them goaltending, and
Well, Bob Whitmore remembered you.
Bob Whitmore probably remembers me very well. I said, hey, McCurchie, come over here. Come here, McCurchie. Come here, McCurchie.
He's trouble, Bob. This guy's trouble.
He is
This
trouble.
guy.
He's been trouble forever.
This guy, well, you have a few words for McCurchie.
I love McCurchie. I love Whitmore more.
Hi, hey Bob, I remember our first couple of years, and Jim Slattery said our first 3 years, you guys were playing basketball in that old Quonset hut, the dirt floor, I don't know, 3,000 people, and when you guys took us into that big Joyce Center senior year, we thought we'd arrive, and then you kicked old, what the hell's his name, Lou Alcindor's ass. It was a beautiful thing. Great to be here, Bob. I love you, brother. See ya.
Illinois, which is a small town in southern Illinois. I was a classmate a couple of years ahead of Bob, but a teammate of his my senior year when Bob was a sophomore. And when I was a sophomore at Notre Dame here, we made a road trip. I think we played St. John's when Johnny D was coach. The next day he said, well, we're going to Washington, D.C. for practice and everything. So we end up at DeMatha High School. We're there practicing before we went to Carolina to play. I'm just a sophomore, kind of a kid from the sticks. I said, what are we doing in D.C. here practicing at a high school? Little did I know, Whitmore came the next year, Collis, and all the rest is history from the great run that Notre Dame has had in D.C. I wish I met Bob, you know, he was a freshman and everything. I just wish I could imitate stand there like this. Yeah, that look. But sophomore year, he and Bobby Arnson fit right in the team. We had great team chemistry. We had a great year. We're still friends today. And the whole team just circulated around Bobby Whitmore. He was a great player, a great teammate. He did give me 5 stitches across my nose. But he did have sharp elbows. He's a great guy. I'm glad he's going to be up in the rafters on the banner, and all his former teammates, he's the greatest, as you all know. Thank you.
From Southeast Washington, who thought he could play basketball, who thought he could dribble, and I walked on the campus, and all of a sudden, 3 or 4 seniors walked in front of me, and one of them was Bob Whitmore. And all I can remember from that day is I wanted to be a part of DeMatha. You know, that day was so important to me simply because growing up in certain parts of Washington, D.C., those opportunities weren't there. Amen. And just to see, you know, what DeMatha could do for people, where it could lead you. I could look at Bob Whitmore, I could look at Bernie Williams, I could look at Brenda McCarthy and say, this school was important to me, you know. I look at my family today, and a lot of the things that are important to me today came through DeMatha. But it also came through those guys who were my mentors. Bob, Bernard Williams, Brenda McCarthy, Terry Wise. Those are the kind of guys that made DeMatha what it was and is for me, even till this day. So I love him. You know, he is more than just a friend. He is a part of my family. He's been a part of my family for 50 plus years. So to all of you who are standing here, just think about 50 years ago, he became a part of your life. And I can't say enough about what he's meant, not just to me, but to my wife, Gail, to our family, and to our friends. So for Bob, wherever you're hiding, you know we're going to get on you because you're not down here. Wherever you're hiding, thank you very much for being a part of our lives.
Beautiful. Opportunity. I'm Bill Collins, and I had the opportunity to go to DeMatha. And my stories of Bob Whitmore really started back at a basketball camp that Morgan and Joe Gallagher had called the Metropolitan Area Basketball Camp. And I ended up having a couple of great coaches. Now I'm a 7th or 8th grader when this took place. And one of them was Joe Kennedy. The other was Bobby Whitmore. Both of them from DeMatha and college. You were part of all those guys that were coaching at that camp. I go to DeMatha and I'm a lowly freshman. And you know, I'm walking through the halls. And we only had one way to go up certain steps, because if you went up the wrong way, you were in serious trouble. And hadn't changed, huh, Tommy? And all of a sudden, you know, I have this guy, you know, 6'9", saying, "Hey, Billy, what you doing?" It's Bobby Whitmore. Joe Kennedy, exactly the same thing. And that started a great relationship. Well, Bob and I remained friends throughout the years. And I had the opportunity and privilege to work with Bob. As many of you know, he was in the oil and gas industry and in leasing. And I was in the telecommunications industry, and we happen to have a lot of leases too. So I met Bob and said, "Why don't you come to work with us, Bob? You do the same type of thing, but instead of oil and gas leases, you're going to be doing leases for towers and antennas and what have you." And so we had the opportunity to work for about 8 or 9 years together.
That's right. He was your lead.
He's a great gentleman. He's a special person. Everybody in our company loved Bob Whitmore. And that's the way he was. He's a special to so many people, certainly within this room, but so many more outside of where he certainly touched their lives. So all we can do is wish Bob the very best and congratulate him on this wonderful honor. Thank you.
My name is Terry Wiles. I went to DeMatha with Bob. He actually played with my older brother. I was a year younger than him. Still am, by the way. Bob became a great friend of our family. He loved my father. My father loved him. Every time he came in our house, in his family will know this, he'd give us that little sideways look, and his eyes would go out. And he just loved my father. He loved our family. He's been my friend for 55 years now. We talk on the phone as much as we can, but not as much as we used to. What do you say about Bob? He was one of the skinniest basketball players I've ever seen. One of the best basketball players I've ever seen. The heart that the guy has, the attitude, the mental attitude. I'm just talking to the wind here. Everybody knows that. One of the greatest people I know, and I'm so proud to call him my friend. Love Bob Whitmore. Thank you.
A speed reading class at Evelyn Wood in 1967. And I came out of the Golden Dome, and there's three guys standing there, Sid Catlett, Collis Jones, and Austin Carr. And they said, hey, big fella. Well, at the time I was 6'2", and I'm looking around, I mean, you know, they must be talking to someone else, you know? So they said, hey. I said, so you play basketball? I said, yeah. I said, okay, well, we're going to the Rock. You want to go? And so I went with them, and they brought me under their wing, and Coach Johnny D had an outreach to South Bend School Corporation, and it was called the Operation Reach Out. Well, the next time that they went out, they brought Bob Whitmore. All of those guys had light, and they put their light on me. The power of that when I was 14 years old. I'm just saying, you know what I mean? Bob Whitmore to me is the epitome, and all of those guys, of humanitarian, because they had time for someone that was still a greenhorn. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, and we started a ministry, my wife and I, 30 years ago called Heroes Camp in South Bend. And for over 100,000 children, most of them orphaned, have done it for free. They haven't charged them anything. And then in 2014, Bob Collis pulled in my driveway when I was pulling out of my driveway. And he said, are you Pat Mackin? And I said, yeah, last time I checked. I said, who might you be? He said, Collis Jones. I said, man, you are blowing my mind. And he had Bob in the car. And they came and our building had a tornado. So they came into the house, and I told them, you guys don't know how you marked my life. And I just wanted to thank him, thank you, thank Bob Arnson was involved with that. I've already thanked, I didn't get a chance to say thank Sid, but I've talked with Austin because the guy I played in college would play with Austin. So thank you for letting me share that.